Hi everyone, I'm Chris Basil Builds. On today's video, wanted to do something different than I haven't done so far, actually show me repairing something. As you've seen in my previous video, I'm working on a 1993 Lexus LS400. I bought the car sitting for 10 years in a garage. The car was in pretty good shape when I got it, but you know, the more time you spend with it, the more stuff you find wrong with it. So I got the car to run by putting a new fuel pump in it, as the previous owner had told me, but they also told me that it had an issue with the dashboard flickering, which, come to find out after doing a little bit of internet research, that's a pretty common problem on those. I've already taken the gauge cluster out of the car. This is it right here. Not really a lot to see on camera. It like lights up all of the needles and everything, so if the lights aren't working in it, it's really pretty much useless to you. In order to fix it, it's actually pretty easy. You'd think maybe the bulbs are out or something, but that's not the case. Actually, what happens is, let me get this cover off and I'll show you. The capacitors on the dash, on the power supply of the dash, go bad, and that'll cause flickering issues. Capacitors are these guys right here. I don't know if you can see here. Bring it a little closer so you can see. Yeah, they kind of look like batteries. The best description I've ever had of a capacitor, that it's kind of like a battery on a timer. I got that info back when I used to fix TVs a long time ago. Also, after getting it running, I had great success for about an hour, and then the car didn't want to start. It acted like it would start and run for a minute and die, and I noticed when I did test drive it while it was running for a little bit that didn't want to shift properly, and apparently all those problems are attributed to, there again, more electrical problems, but this time in the ECU. This repair, also reasonably simple, same problem, bad capacitors. I was able to find a kit from a company called German Autotech. They've got all kinds of different stuff. You might check them out if you need to fix a radio, a screen. They have a lot of different things. You know, this kind of may look a little intimidating to you looking at this circuit board, but really fixing it's pretty simple. All you got to do is get behind the circuit board back here on these points, and you have to desolder the old capacitors out and solder the new capacitors in. Like I said, it does sound a little daunting. It seems like it's kind of a pain in the butt. I'll be honest, it's not real easy, but there's plenty of room. I have a Henko desolder gun. We're going to be using that to take the capacitors out. The kit I ordered from German Autotech, I have 3 capacitors for the gauge cluster. This kit right here. And then I have these 10 capacitors for the ECU. I got the soldering iron warmed up. I'm also going to be using my soldering iron cleaner. I've got some solder right here, and I've got some snippers. As you can see, the capacitors have a little bit longer leads on them than you're going to need. So what we'll do is we'll get in there and snip them, pull the old ones out. I'm going to do it one at a time. That's the way I like to do it, so you don't get confused. Also too, if you'll note, these capacitors have a line on one side, but they don't on the other side. They do have a polarity, so be cautious when you're taking your old ones out to put the new one in with the same polarity. Some boards will have a mark, some won't. I'm not a circuit board specialist by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm handy enough to get it done. So yeah, we got it all heated up, ready to go. I do have one capacitor. I'm going to put it on time lapse when I do the repair, because I don't want you guys to have to sit here for like 45 minutes while I do this. So I'm going to time lapse me soldering it all together, and when I'm done, I'm going to click back in and I'm going to show you guys what a bad capacitor looks like. Sometimes you get visible damage, and I did notice one on the ECU that vented. Kind of looks like it exploded. So once I get it off the board, it'll be easier to show you on camera. So I'm going to flip it over to time lapse and we'll get started. Well, I tried to time lapse and I don't know how to do that, so I already got one capacitor out. Capacitors are rated in voltage and microfarads. This one is a 50 volt, 10 UF. UF means microfarad. See how the leads are all short? And you probably can't really see how I got it off the board. So what I got to do now is trim these down where it'll go on there. I'm going to trim probably not enough off at first just to get it in there. Probably trim a little bit more. This board does have marks to indicate polarity, which is nice. Don't need it, but it's good that it's got it, I guess. Not that it's hard, it's just tedious, you know, like a lot of electrical type stuff. That should actually work just fine. This board sits recessed in here, so plenty of room to play. The cables that hold the two boards together are pretty stiff, which sucks, but not that big of a deal. Main tricks I can give you: don't get the board too hot, and don't mess up the solder points on the board. And what I like to do is get the tip of the desolder. That actually sucks the solder off the board, which makes this thing good for doing circuit board work. Well, what I like to do is get the solder right on the lead, and then put the lead of the capacitor through the hole. Just get it just hot enough, and it'll pretty much transfer the solder right onto the solder point. You want to make sure you got enough on there. You don't want to have a whole bunch. You don't want it, well, especially on something like this, it's kind of close quarters. You don't want to solder something together that you didn't want to. You also want to make sure you got a good connection, which this looks pretty good. I think that will do. Kind of heated up this one little section a little more than I wanted to, but it will be okay. Well, that's 1 out of 10 done. Moving on. Looks like this one's just literally right next to it. Boop, 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 boop. Yep. Something I don't like about how a lot of circuit boards are constructed is it's like they bend the leads over once they get them on. I mean, this stuff's all like computer done, so you know, you gotta imagine a guy in his garage messing with it 30 years later. It's probably not going to be quite as calculated as a machine from 30 years ago was. That noise you're hearing is me sucking the solder off the board. Also too, this thing's really tricky about, I use this little tip cleaner? I don't know what it is, but gold or something. I like to get all the crap off the tip. This soldering iron's lasted me a really long time, and I want it to last a lot longer because it's really handy. So try to treat it with respect. A lot of times too, what I do is I'll get these leads hotted up, and I'll grab the capacitor on the other side, get it hot, and pull it out. These suckers don't want to let go. They've been on here for a while. They are, you know, chemically soldered on, so. This is actually the one I wanted to show you guys. Don't know how closely you can see in here. You see there's some like green goo, black goo. Well, that's the material inside of the capacitor has actually vented and came out, causing this thing to no longer be as effective as it needs to be. So that's kind of the main cause of failure here. There's 10 capacitors on this board that need to be replaced. I'm on number 2. I'm going to shut the camera off and do the other 8, and then I'll come back whenever I switch to the dash. Okay, well, I'm not really sure if the camera's recording this or not. I'm having some issues. Wanted to show something on this board a little bit different. The capacitors we did on the first board, like these, that went like that through the board. These ones on this board are a little different. I'll point to this one right here. This actually solders from the top of the board because the board's two-sided. The one that came out actually looked like this. It was sitting flat. I wanted to show that on a video because when I was looking at, you know, this thing's got a bunch of capacitors on it, and I thought to myself, well, this kit only came with 3. This board's got like 20 on there, so obviously these 3 go to a certain place. So I went to the website, German Audio Tech again. Their support sucks, by the way. They offer a good product, but I've tried to message their support multiple different times and they never get back to me in any sort of timely fashion. But luckily they had a technical bulletin side of their website, and I'll put a link to that in the description that shows the actual 3 capacitors that need to be replaced. There is this one, C212, which I've already done, C147, which I've already done, and then I have to do C142. So I'm going to knock that out real quick, and then let's put these things back in and see if this car runs and the lights work. I'm sick of messing around. I want to see if this thing's going to run. I've been waiting for 2 weeks for these parts, so wish me luck. Alright guys, I'm going to film a wrap-up video about the Lexus LS400 circuit board repair, ECU install, dash install. I should have filmed it. I didn't film it. I got it running. The computer worked. That was all fine. It drives fine. The dashboard repair didn't work. The dash kit only came with 3 capacitors. I was a little sketched about that from the get-go. I think I mentioned that earlier in the video. Well, I put it all back together, and I had seen before I put it back in, there was one that was kind of crusty looking that I should have probably been more suspect on. I put it back in, the lights were flickering. After the time I'd spent, I sat back and I said, you know what? I think this is the perfect opportunity to maybe just kick this one on down the road and move on to something else. I don't have a whole lot of money to spend on doing these projects, and sometimes they don't end up being that profitable. It's really kind of more just for fun. So I decided that I'm going to just cut my losses, sell it as a running car, and bring it to the next person that can hopefully do some more with it. So that's what I did. Sold it, made a new contact, met a nice guy. So I wish him the best. Hopefully he does well with it. So I just wanted to click back in and say, sorry, didn't video it, but the car's running. Good to go. On to the next thing. 2 big things coming up. Next couple videos are going to be really cool. You guys are going to dig it. One thing you might guess that I'm going to do, and one thing that you're definitely not going to see coming. So stay tuned, like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. Check out the next video. Thanks.